so I can start. Benny, Miriam, Mitzvot, Sarah, Yaakov, Raphael, Moshe, Baruch. Very good. Sounds good. Okay, let me turn off this thing. B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh v'Natzliach. Shir Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're starting a new week, Baruch Hashem. New week, new Torah, new everything, Baruch Hashem. Everything is new, Baruch Hashem. Continuing our series of the Jewish Hashkafa, addressing a very critical topic when it comes to machloket or different opinions by Chachamim, which seems to be a troubling issue for some people that are actually learning more than others and don't know how to deal with it. And this is one of the things that the Chazon Ish is going to show us here, BeEzrat HaShem. Tonight's shiur is going to be for the Refuah Shlema for Rabbanit Sarah bat Levana, Sarah bat Anat, Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Avi Mori David ben Nesriya, Imi Morati Doris bat Jora, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahis that continue to learn with us, get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with us, and of course, those wonderful souls that continue to support our organization by donating in their time, their money, to help us continue doing everything we're doing for free, Baruch Hashem. For those of you that have made your orders on our website, the Kiruv website, to get some free books to distribute in your community, don't worry if you haven't gotten your order. We're just getting, Baruch Hashem, a lot of orders, and we'll get to everyone, BeEzrat HaShem. There's quite a few packages scheduled for tomorrow, so many of you are going to get some boxes with full of books and other things and USBs in the next week or so, while others perhaps will have to wait till next week, but there's, Baruch Hashem, many more orders coming in every day. Anyone that hasn't ordered the new book that we have, either by Rav Sharvit, for those that have yeshivot and kolos next to them, or the new book by Rav Ephraim and his Rabbanit. That's a fantastic book for new couples, old couples, or people looking to get married that speak either Hebrew or English. This is the first book our organization has in English, and you can order it. You can order a box of 20 or more on the website bhkiruv.org. bhkiruv.org. This is a fantastic book that can help people to get a clarity of how to be a Jew that's married, how to be a Jew that wants to get married, how to be a good wife, how to be a good husband, a good mother, a good father. These are some of the things that are shown in there, alongside some beautiful illustrations, some pretty pictures that are certainly a big addition. So with that being said, we have quite a bit to learn tonight. I don't know if any of you could actually see the amount of Sfarim that we have here is a little bit more than usual, which BeEzrat HaShem will have the merit to use each and every one of them. But the key is to understand that the Chazon Ish here has been taking us on a journey. For anyone that hasn't been following this series, even though you could certainly benefit from simply watching this lecture, as each lecture independently has topics that are good to be learned individually, it's certainly going to be a lot more rewarding and a lot more clear for anyone that watches this series from the beginning and just follows along, especially the first 20 lectures that give you a very good foundation of what emunah and bitachon is. Because if a person does not have emunah and bitachon, many of the things that follow it simply become irrelevant. And that's one of the things we also discussed last week, as the Chazon Ish gave us the clarification of the importance of having emunah and bitachon that is dependent on a foundation of yirat shamayim. And this is something that, again, we're going to build on this week, because without Yirat Shamayim, there is no Chokhmah, there is no wisdom, and without wisdom, a person is simply never going to get to have emunah and bitachon on Hashem. They may have some fantasy in their head, thinking that if they think good, good things will happen, like some of the so-called gurus out there teach. But a person that has lived long enough to see this, type of thinking go to waste, will know that this is certainly not part of the Torah. It is very important to think positive and to think good and to be optimistic, but not because you think that your thoughts will lead to a changed world. Rather, your thoughts can certainly, affect your mood. It can affect your behavior, but it's not necessarily going to change the world around you. There are certainly things that can change the world around you, but that requires action, not just thoughts. So, with that being said, we have in this in this chapter, in the section 5 of this chapter, the Chazon Ish has really been going and letting us know about the wisdom of the sages. The wisdom of the sages when it came to science, when it comes to medicine, when it comes to philosophy, is beyond extraordinary. Anyone that wants to see a little bit, some examples of it, can watch some of the last few lectures, 2-3 lectures that we've actually covered this topic. You could also watch our film that we did several years ago called Torah, Science, and Wisdom of the Sages, or Ancient Wisdom. I think we had a couple of names for it, but it's Torah, Science, and Ancient Wisdom, I think is the last one that we had. Same film. This film and these lectures really show actual examples of the extraordinary wisdom of the sages, actually being put to practice, whether it's their knowledge of different medical knowledge and expertise that is not even available today. For example, the liposuction is available today, but not in the same capacity as it was available to the sages almost 2,000 years ago. As we saw from the example in the Gemara Masechet Bava Metzia, when they gave a surgery to Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Shimon that took out 3 buckets full of fat out of his body. He was a very big person, not for the sake of beautifying him, but rather for the sake of testing to see how pure his flesh was and if he had any sins. Point being is, we see that many of the things that the sages discussed showed their expertise in science, in medical, in philosophy. But what happens when we are addressing different topics, whether it's sensitive, fundamental topics like Sachar ve'onesh, which is reward and punishment, Gehenom, things of that nature, or it's other topics when it comes to halacha, comes to a different, a different idea, different opinion about the observance of Shabbat, or the leniencies that you have for certain people that didn't grow up religious. We have these types of things still, obviously in our lives, very much a pertinent part of learning Torah today. So what happens when you see different opinions by great sages? Whether it's the great sages of today, great sages of the previous generation, can you just pick and choose whichever one you want? On one hand, it sounds reasonable. I mean, he's a great sage, he's a great sage. This is a group of big sages, this is a group of big sages. On the other hand, we have the Gemara in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, page 14, say that the Kula de Bet Shammai, the Kula de Bet Hillel Rasha'u, someone that looks for the leniencies of Bet Shammai or the leniencies of Bet Hillel, meaning he's always looking for the most lenient opinion. Whatever is easiest for him to do, that's the one he's going to pick. The Gemara says that person is a Rasha, that person is a wicked person. On the other hand, the same Gemara says, the Chuma de Bet Shammai, the Chuma de Bet Hillel, someone that's looking for the stringencies of Bet Shammai or Bet Hillel, which are obviously two conflicting houses of Torah, are, if he's only looking for who's the most stringent, he's like a blind man walking in darkness. And unfortunately, this is one of the things that happens in the world today when people get some inspiration to become more religious, but they do not make themselves a rabbi like the Torah commands for us to do, and they simply just lead their own way. And they figure that if learn something, then I can just paskin for myself. If I read enough, if I listen to enough lectures, then certainly I can just choose whatever is best for me, especially if I'm the most stringent. And then finally one day he goes to the synagogue and he sees that no one else is as stringent as him, and he starts looking at everybody else as if they are wicked. But in reality, the same Torah tells him that his stringency makes him look like a fool. Why? It's wrong. So there are times to be lenient, there are times to be stringent, and a person needs to know that they don't know enough to do things by themselves. Hence the reason why there's such importance of having a rabbi. Not just a rabbi that lived 2,000 years ago or 800 years ago or even 30 years ago, but an actually living, breathing rabbi that you can ask and consult with before you take things on. Many times I have young people reach out to me and tell me, listen, Rabbi, I made a big mistake. I made a neder that I'm not going to do such and such. And now I made a mistake. I broke the neder. I made a vow that I'm never going to sin again. But now I just sinned. I made a vow that I'm not going to go to such place, but I'm there right now. And I'm afraid because I heard in a shiur that someone that breaks the neder is someone in his family can die. What can I do to break this neder? The first question really is, who told you should make a neder? And the answer is, he told himself. He thought he's being more religious. He or she thought that they're being more stringent and therefore more holy. But in reality, they're being more foolish. Why? No one told you to make a neder. You should not make a neder. And in fact, you don't know enough about a neder to make a neder. Why? You can't make a neder to not make a sin. It's not a valid neder. Why? Because you've already made a vow at Mount Sinai. And something that already has a pre-existing neder on it, you can't make an additional neder on it. But hence the point. Many times people think that if they wear certain type of clothes, that's going to make them more frum. If they make certain vows, that's going to make them more frum. If they add certain stringencies, that's going to make them more frum. But in reality, more times than not, that just makes them more apparent for anyone that's religious and learned enough that this person is new. This person doesn't know enough and probably does not have a rabbi that knows enough either, if he even has a rabbi. So these are type of the things that you deal with every single day. Again, we praise and we're happy to see Baalei Tshuva, we're happy to see converts, we're happy to see people that are trying to be better and to better themselves. But again, there's a way to do things. Sometimes I have new people that want to do the same thing I did. I saw your film, I want to be a Talmid Chacham, I want to do the same thing, so can you study with me 7 hours just like your rabbi did with you? This, is very, very cute because it shows that they watched the film, but it also shows they didn't get the point. Everyone has their own journey. My journey was one thing, and you got a little bit of a tidbit of an idea of what it was like. But to think that the same thing can be repeated for you means that you don't really understand the whole point of the message. The whole point of the message is you have to make self-sacrifice. You have to make major changes. That's the whole point. It doesn't mean that just because you decided and you woke up on the right side of the bed, that the whole world has to change and acclimate themselves for your new change, and now all of a sudden everyone has a free 7 hours to spend with you. The reality is that today, there's an enormous amount of Torah that we have online. We have literally 5,000 shulim myself, another 5,000 or 6,000 shulim by Rabbi Ephraim, and a couple of thousand shulim from other rabbis of the organization. Well, then more enough for anyone who truly wants to learn to learn. But people want that hand-holding. People want that custom-made. People want the same thing, but they don't realize what it entailed. They don't realize the rest of the story. And the same concept goes when you're reading something in a book and you see that there is a halacha, there's something that one of the sages said, and then you see that, in the commentary or even sometimes in the body of the work, it says, V'yesh omrim, which means, and there are some that say such and such. And many people say, oh, wait, this is what he just wrote everything on, but he also said there are some that say otherwise. So the otherwise sounds better to me. Or in the Gemara, there are many times where it says Ika di Amrin and Ika there's the first opinion, second opinion, or the first version, second version. So which version do we go with? These are some of the questions that are very, very critical for a person to know what to do and how do we actually paskin halacha, how do we actually decide which is the right way, which is the wrong way. And that's one of the things that is going to be the message we're going to try to BeEzrat HaShem address. It won't look like it at first because we're going back to the medical knowledge of the sages, but you'll see as we go along how it quickly shows that there's a lot more to than just showing us the medical expertise and the wisdom of the sages and obviously our forefathers, some of which were the descendants of King David. So the Chazon Ish brings us several examples in the Gemara, in Masechet Chulin, in the Gemara, Masechet Bava Metzia, and different types of places in the Torah of how there was extraordinary knowledge by the sages. And now he brings us what we delved into briefly last week, which is the Gemara in Masechet Psachim, page 56a, which tells us about the Sefer HaRefuot, the Book of Cures. The Book of Cures that was given to us by Shlomo HaMelech, who had divine wisdom that was gifted to him by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. On the day of his birthday, when he became king, Hashem asked him what he wants. Was he want to be the most powerful king, the richest king? And instead of asking for power and wealth, he asked for wisdom of the Torah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu was so happy with his decision that he actually gave him everything that he asked for as far as the wisdom, alongside the two other options, which is wealth and power. So during the time of Shlomo, there was no war. Everyone was scared of him. Even the animals, the trees, the bugs, and the demons. Everyone was under the kinghood of Shlomo HaMelech. His wisdom was extraordinary, and the world at large knew this. This is also the reason why he was able to marry the princes from all of the nations, 1,000 different princes that were excited to marry him, including one of the princess of Egypt. She caused him many problems because she did not officially abandon her idolatry, or she brought it back into her life. But the point being is that Shlomo HaMelech wanted to marry all of these women because he knew that in order for the Mashiach to officially arrive, he has to bring world peace. And what better way to do world peace than to convert all of the nations to Judaism? And that in essence was his undercover plan, to get the princess, to be happy wife, happy life, and then eventually influence our nation to convert to Judaism, or at the very least, be righteous Noahites and no more idolatry. This plan obviously did not work, but the point being is that was, in essence, the plan. So we see the wisdom of Shlomo HaMelech is unlike others. And one of the things that showed some of his wisdom to the generations that followed him was this Sefer HaRefuot, this Book of Cures, which the Torah tells us was something out of this world, because it literally had the perfect cure for any ailment possible. There are over 900 ways, to be exact, 903 ways to die, according to the Gemara. Many of those ways are different types of illnesses, whether it be the illnesses of today or the illnesses of the previous generations. All of those illnesses have a cure. And this book had it. All you have to do, open the book. Oh, it says, take this, take this, take this. Cook it together. Take a small shot of it. Finished. You're cured. In a short period of time, you're back to better than ever. So obviously, this is the greatest thing in the world. If this was around today, there would be a lot of unemployed pharmaceutical people out there. But needless to say, the decision of Chizkiyahu HaMelech was not only one that shocked the world at the time, but is certainly one that the world is benefiting from on the capitalism end of it today. But here the Chazon Ish is telling us that this Sefer HaRefuot was hidden away by Chizkiyahu HaMelech. And Rashi comments that this was because the people were not humbled by their illness, but will be cured immediately. Meaning that the people did not get to the point of the sickness, which is Hashem made you sick. That's because you're being punished, because you did something wrong, because He wants you to do tshuva and come back to Him. In essence, that's the point. You got sick so you can do tshuva, so you can reflect on the fact that you are insignificant, that you need Hashem. That's one opinion. The Rambam, who followed who lived about 100 years after Rashi, writes in his commentary on a Mishnah two opinions. And he says that he was given an explanation by one of the Chachamim in his generation that Shlomo HaMelech wrote this Sefer Refuot so that when anyone became ill, he would refer to that book, do what was written in it, and be cured. And when Chizkiyahu saw that people were not trusting in Hashem, meaning they had no bitachon, he took it away and he hid it. This is one of the opinions the Rambam brings. But he himself does not agree with this opinion. In fact, he refutes this opinion vehemently, even though he brings it up. Now you would ask yourself, wait, why bring it up if you disagree with it? Because there's value there too. Because there's Torah there too. And that's one of the things that a person that learns Torah gets to understand, that even if something is not the law, it's not the truth per se, as far as the final bottom line, there is Torah in it, there is truth in it, there is wisdom in it, and it's all part of the great, extraordinary living Torah. So the Rambam brings this as this is one opinion. Yet, the Rambam there disagrees with that commentary. And he's saying this lightly, because if you look inside the commentary on the Mishnah, the Rambam disagrees with this vehemently, calling it like a big waste and completely impossible, and all types of things, like aggressive writings against this. The Rambam disagrees with this commentary, claiming that it's not right to take the means of healing away from people, just like it's not right to deprive them of food. But it seems that, says this is now the Chazon Ish going back, it seems that the commentary mentioned by the Rambam is the one passed down through the generations, whereas the Rambam's own commentary is difficult to understand. For it should not have said the Gemara's that said in the Gemara Sefer Refuot without elaboration, but rather it should have said what was in it in the terms of the forbidden and the harmful. Chazon Ish clarifies what's going on with the Rambam here, that he's disagreeing with it, and what is he saying? What's his opinion? In so many words, the Chazon Ish is telling us that you have Rashi saying the reason why Chizkiyahu hid this extraordinary book of medicine, of cures, I should say, not even medicine, is because people did not fear God. They didn't get to the point. They didn't get the message why they're sick. The Rambam says he learned from someone in his generation that it's because people did not have confidence in Hashem. Didn't have bitachon in Hashem, meaning they didn't pray enough that Hashem will heal them without taking any medicine, because they relied on this medicine. But his opinion himself was that this book contained both cures and poison, meaning they had good and forbidden. And some people, like we have in every generation, were wicked and took the book in order to learn clever poisons in order to kill people. Sort of like part of the pharmaceutical industry does today. So, here we see three different opinions. Why was the reason that Chizkiyahu hid this book? Lack of fear of heaven, lack of confidence in heaven, confidence in Hashem. 3, poison, bad people. Those are the 3 reasons. The Rambam and the Chazon Ish says, really the one that has the most tradition aside from Rashi is the one where they lack bitachon, meaning lacking bitachon and lacking yirat shamayim are the most common ones that we find. Whereas the one that the Rambam himself is saying, which is that there was poison in there, is not as common. So the Rambam questions the commentary on the basis of comparison to food. And that requires understanding. Meaning, instead of telling us which one is the right answer, like you would typically expect from, any other type of, secular book of law or of science or any type of debate, the Chazon Ish goes in a completely different direction. He's not even telling you yet who's right and who's wrong. He hinted towards it, but in reality, he didn't confirm. He didn't say, this is it. Instead, he's telling you, what is the argument of the Rambam in the first? Why is he even arguing this? Because that's more important than which one is right. Which one is the final rule? Which one is the final reality? And he says, the whole basis of the Rambam's refuting this is that he questions this commentary because he compares this cure to food. Because it says in the Gemara in Masechet Bava Kama, page 85a, that it's learned in the Tana Devei Rabbi Ishmael regarding a person who's who caused bodily damage to another person, and the Torah says that he has to recompense him. So it says there, and completely heal him. Meaning, you punch somebody in the face, you cause them some gash on their face, now you have to fix it. So what does it mean, fix it? Rashi says, pay the doctor to heal him. Go pay a doctor that's going to stitch him up. And from this we learn that there's a permission has been given from the Torah to go to the doctor to get a cure, and for the doctor himself to heal you, to help you. Also in the Gemara in Masechet Brachot, it says, page 68, in the name of Rav Acha, that since it's not the way of people to heal, but nevertheless it's customary in regards to this particular issue, as far as going to a doctor, whether you should pray for it or you should just go to the doctor. Rashi there explains that the people should not really try to cure other people, rather they should ask HaShem for mercy. And Abaye elaborates on this Gemara and objects to Rav Acha. Rav Acha is telling us, listen, you have a sickness, you have an ailment, you have some problem, don't go to the doctor. Why should you go to the doctor? Go to the healer of all wounds, the healer of all sicknesses. Who? Go to HaShem. Go to HaShem. That's what Rav Acha says. Abaye says no. He objects. Why? He says one should not say that, because permission has been granted for the doctor to heal. And from this we see that medical care is not like food, for we don't need a special verse in the Torah to permit us to eat. Rather, hunger is not a punishment, and eating is actually a way to serve Hashem. As it says, the table of the righteous people is compared to an altar in the temple. And it says in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, chapter 3, Mishnah number 3, 3 people who ate at one table and spoke words of Torah while they're eating, it's as if they ate at the table of Hashem. But illness is a punishment. And it's right for an ill person to strengthen and resolve his resolve and do tshuva, and to pray for mercy. But permission was nevertheless granted to seek treatment because only a select few are on such a high spiritual level at which prayer is sufficient and physical treatment is required. So what's going on here? Here Abaye is not telling Rav Acha that he's wrong. He's saying, if there's an ailment, then you're right. A person can pray to Hashem to help him. But don't say that this is the only way, that we're not allowed to go to the doctor, and if you go to the doctor, you're not religious enough, or you're not close to Hashem enough. You should know the fact that the Torah says that, the doctor is allowed to cure, is allowed to heal, that means that the Torah knows that many, and quite frankly, most people are not at that level to simply just pray to Hashem for a cure. He has a stomach problem, he has an eye problem, he has a head problem, he has a leg problem, he has any type of problem. He wants to go to the doctor. And that does not make him less religious. Perhaps he has less bitachon in Hashem than the one that truly believes 100% that Hashem will cure him. But don't just say that if you are a true servant of Hashem, you don't need to ever go to a doctor, just pray to Hashem. No. You can do this or that. It all depends on where you stand as far as where your level is. The fact that we have permission from the Torah to go to a doctor to seek treatment means that most people are going to do that, just that. Why? Because very few people are in such a high spiritual level where they can actually withstand not going to the doctor. And even more so, even if a person says, you know what, I'm going to force myself to be on that spiritual level and simply not go to the doctor, and Hashem is going to send me the cure. Now, that's very nice that you're trying to do it, but if your prayer is not at such a high level, if your righteousness is not at such a high level, if your actions are not at such a high level, outside of that particular act over there, your prayer may not be answered, meaning that you actually have to go to the doctor because your actions do not justify, preceding it, do not justify your current actions of just simply being lazy or simply refusing to go to the doctor because you're trying to force Hashem to give you a miracle. So here there is a debate between the sages, but it's not really a debate of one saying right and the other one saying wrong. No, he's just simply saying, don't just say this one thing, rather it's this and that. It's praying to Hashem and for a cure, and also going to the doctor for most people, unless they're very, very high spiritually, and like the Ramban says, people that have a high level of Yirat Shamayim, they don't need to go to the doctor. There's nothing for them at a doctor because Hashem will heal them. So now going back to the argument at hand, which is in regards to Chizkiyahu, what does this all have to do with it? Now it says, in regards to the generation of Chizkiyahu, it was different than all the other generations. Because the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin, page 94b, says that during the time of Chizkiyahu, he made, literally, almost everyone do tshuva, to such an extent that he put the sword into the ground. He said, whoever does not learn Torah is going to get the sword instead, meaning death penalty. Everyone had to learn Torah. And this had such an impact on Am Yisrael that lived under his kingdom. During his time, the kingdom was split into two. So it wasn't all of Am Yisrael. But the people that were with him, the people that were under his domain, if you will, the Gemara says that they searched from the north to the south, from Dan until BeEzrat, and they couldn't find one person that was ignorant of Torah. They searched from Givat to Antripas, and they could not find even a young boy or girl, nor a man or a woman, who were not proficient in the halachot of purity and impurity, which is the most difficult parts of the Torah. And also the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin says in page 28 that on the verse in Proverbs chapter 31 verse 30, the Chachamim say this verse is describing three different generations. This is the verse that you sing to your wife, Eshet Chayil Mi'imtza, on Friday night. So it says, the deceitfulest charm is referring to the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu. They were at such high level. Vain is beauty is referring to the generation of Yeshua ben Nun. And a God-fearing wife is to be praised. That's referring to the generation of Chizkiyahu Melech. Such a generation, therefore, was worthy of standing strong in their bitachon and emunah in Hashem, and could shun the services of doctors. And therefore, the Rambam already wrote in Parashat Bechukotai, this is Nachmanides, that the few remaining people who are zealous and sanctified by the service of Hashem do not use doctors. But that is the level of very few, such as Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his friends. So here, Rabotai Yekarim, we see a lot of information. We're going to try to break it down into simple words here. That the overall body of it is really discussing what happened to this book. What happened to this book? We know what happened to the book. Chizkiyahu hid it. Next question comes up is, why did he hide it? Rashi, based out of France, 900 years ago, the ultimate foundation of commentary on both the written Torah and the oral Torah, says the reason why Chizkiyahu hid it was because people did not get the message. They did not get the message that this sickness is a punishment, and Hashem is giving them a sign, if you will, or a message that it's time for them to repent. It's time for them to do tshuva. As Rabbi Chaim Volozhin writes nearly 200 years ago, that one of the ways that HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to us today is through ailments, through pain. How so? If your arm hurts, start reviewing all of the actions you did with your arm. See if you can find any sin that you've done recently with your arm. If you haven't done recently, look further back. It could be something as horrible as wasting seed, or stealing money, stealing something else, touching something you're not allowed to touch. Many things that a person can do with their hands. On the other hand, if your leg hurts, Hashem is telling you, you made a sin with your legs. Perhaps there was a Shiur Torah that you were supposed to go to, but instead of going to the Shiur Torah, you decided to stay home and watch the game. You decided to go to, some nightclub. You decided to go anywhere else except to the synagogue to go watch a Shiur Torah. You use your legs for the wrong reason. Your eyes hurt. You haven't watched your eyes. You have a headache. You have some dirty thoughts in your mind. And again, these are just minor examples. There's no end to the types of issues that HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the tools that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has. Point being is, Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says, if there is pain somewhere, know that there is a clear message there for you particularly. For you. Why? Because if your arm hurt for a sin that your leg made, how can you learn from such a thing? Such a punishment would be vicious by God because there's nothing you can learn. How can you connect the leg to the arm? How can you connect the eyes to the feet? There's no way. Hence the reason why if you have something hurting, then you should know HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking to you to that. Now, Rashi is saying that Am Yisrael forgot about this message to the extent where they simply didn't take it into account. They didn't take it into account. They just wanted the cure. And you can't blame them. Anyone that has endured pain in their life knows that even the Gemara itself, in Masechet Chagigah, I believe it is, that says that you don't judge people when they're enduring pain. So much so that when Job said, bad things, said heretical things against Hashem while he was enduring so much pain, the sages asked, how come Hashem did not punish him? And then they answer, that's because in heaven they do not judge you when you're in the middle of pain. You're not judged the same way. This does not give you a free ticket to just do whatever you want just because you're in pain. Point being is, when a person is in pain, they're not themselves. So they're not judged accordingly. So now, the people had pain, they want a cure. They're not worried about, listen, oh, my arm hurts. That means that I touched something. Oh, yeah, that money that I stole from Steve. I probably should give it back. Oh, my eyes hurt. Oh, yeah, you know what? I looked at that girl. No, they didn't think like that. It's like, just give me a cure. Just give me a cure. Now, this is all fine and great if you want the cure because the pain is just simply too much for you to endure. But what about after the pain is gone? Why didn't you review your actions after the pain is gone? To at least do tshuva then. So Rashi says they didn't have enough Yirat Shamayim. The Rambam, on the other hand, says two different opinions. He's telling us, number one, he's heard an opinion where the people did not have bitachon, where they were not at the level that the sages said in the name of Rav Acha, that they simply should just rely on HaShem, that He's going to provide them the cure, and not go to doctors. Not go to doctors. Just rely on HaShem. They didn't do it anymore. Why? Because they figured, listen, I could just get the cure, so that's it. I don't need HaShem. I don't need anything. I don't need to rely on anything. I already have the solution. This disconnected people from HaShem. But the Rambam disagrees with this opinion because he says, listen, how could it possibly be that such a righteous generation where you couldn't find anyone that was ignorant of Torah? You couldn't find someone that didn't know the most difficult parts of the Torah. How can you say such a thing where people did not have confidence in Hashem? But yet at the same time the Rambam says that perhaps the reason why Chizkiyahu took this book was because no matter how many righteous people were under the Klal Yisrael, there's always some wicked people. Even if there's one wicked person, he can influence others. And there was some information in that book, since it was in essence a book with a lot of revelations in it, there was some information in that book that could make the perfect poisons, that could endanger Am Yisrael. And Chizkiyahu saw that apparently either this was already being used to hurt people or kill them, or he simply did not trust the people of that generation because there was one too many wicked people also that were walking among some of the righteous. Even if you go to a yeshiva, or you go to a kollel, or you go to a synagogue, even if everybody's praying with great kavanah and they love Hashem and they're excited, or like we went to Eretz Yisrael, we were praying Baruch Hashem in our kollel on Rosh Hashanah, the Chazan starts crying hysterical. You would think this person is like, he has all the sins in the world, but when you know him personally, he's like a Kodesh Kodeshim, an amazing tzaddik. Doesn't even look right or left, simply looks at the Torah, but he's crying hysterical on Rosh Hashanah, yearning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please forgive us. Please help us. Please accept our gratitude. I started crying. Other people start crying. It's Rosh Hashanah. But we're crying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? This is Yom Adin. Most people say, yeah, I reserve my crying for Yom Kippur. If you're crying to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Rosh Hashanah, that's good. So you would think, people, they are crying to Hashem at the time of Chizkiyahu. You're right. But guess what? Even at a place where you have a chazan that's crying, even at a place where you have people learning Torah, even at a place you have people only come there to learn Torah, there's always going to be some wicked people that try to get things to go the opposite direction. I remember there was one time a lecture I did in New York, and right when I got to this place, somebody told me that some famous or infamous heretic came to the event looking to cause trouble. And this clown apparently likes to go to lectures by different rabbis and intimidate them with his questions, with his demeanor. And apparently he's caused some trouble for some rabbis. And Baruch Hashem, I was made a little differently. So I was actually looking forward to this. I'm talking for 3 hours. 3 hours, this guy is sitting there like he's part of the wall. Doesn't say a single word. Then after 3 hours of talking, there's questions and answers, and all of a sudden this guy comes in for the attack. He starts throwing all types of things that are in essence trying to contradict what was said Not by actually bringing any proofs from the Torah or anything, by simply just disagreeing with it and saying all types of things to cause people, other people, to have doubts. So of course, as his plan was to destroy, mine was also to destroy, and he got his own foot in his own mouth when he got the unexpected rebuttals that were not something that he's ever seen before, because usually, the rabbis that he's encountered were perhaps a little bit of different demeanor, less aggressive, and quite frankly, more surprised. So, Baruch Hashem for that. The key is to understand that there's always going to be somebody. There's always going to be somebody out there that is going to try to throw some mud on your beautiful creation. You're trying to do something good, and someone is going to be out there and try to just bring you down. This is like the snake, the serpent. The serpent, initially, when he was created, was the most beautiful creature out there. He walked on two, he had arms and legs, he had in essence the image of a body, an image of a human being, but he was an animal. He was able to talk, but he was punished. Not only did HaShem remove his ability to walk, or remove his arms and legs, but also cut his tongue. Why did he cut his tongue? Because his sin was made with his tongue. And any time that the Chachamim, the Chafetz Chaim, talks about people that are Ba'alei Lashon Hara, that talk about Lashon Hara, or gossip and things like that, he says that their sins are like the sins of the snake, where they simply want to kill for no joy whatsoever. Why? Because the snake doesn't necessarily eat everything he kills. Sometimes he just kills. Sometimes he just kills. So sometimes a person says Lashon Hara, says gossip, says something, not because they benefit out of this information being exposed about so-and-so. She just told everybody that so-and-so had a miscarriage. She just told everyone that so-and-so is having problems in their shlom bayit. She just told everybody that so-and-so just bought a house. He just told everyone that this guy just got fired or he just got a raise. All of these things are Lashon Hara, by the way. All of them are forbidden. I always tell people, don't talk about people. But for whatever reason or another, people they miss that part of the shiur. And that's why the Gehenom parties continue. Where people just get together, sometimes it's 2 of them, sometimes it's 5 of them, sometimes it's 20 of them talking about other people, and everyone in that party is going to go to Gehenom for that party. Why? You're not allowed to talk about people. Unless it's for to'elet, it's to help somebody. But generally speaking, these types of talks, these types of conversations are never to help anybody. They're simply just to show some juicy information about somebody that you've been waiting to tell somebody. This is like the snake, like serpent, where he just spits out his venom without any benefit whatsoever. So there's going to be people like that in your life that just spit out venom without any benefit whatsoever. They just want to hurt. Why? You ask them, they don't want to even give you a reason. They don't even know. They just do it. I remember years ago that when I first started giving my shulim and putting them online, which in itself was a funny story of divine inspiration to do something that I didn't even realize I was doing. And, some people started watching the lectures and started subscribing to the YouTube channel. But it was, a small number, 180 something subscribers. And my main goal was to publicize, my rabbi's channel, Rabbi Ephraim's channels, to get more and more people to watch him. I wasn't necessarily looking to become a speaker, needless to say, do what I'm doing today. But anyway, we had our shiurim online, and some people were coming to the shiur, and some people were watching online. And Baruch Hashem, many of those people that watched it back then, nearly a decade ago, are still watching today. Certainly improved and inspired all these years. But at that time, I remember coming out of shul one time, and one guy from the Kehillah who was, like one of these people that's like, perhaps his cousin is the serpent. He pretended to be a friend, but, or whatever, somebody that's in the Kila that was friendly. And he sees me outside, he goes, "Hey, how are you? Listen, I saw that you have a YouTube channel. You have people listening to the shiur, to your shiurim." I said, "Yeah, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem." And he says, "Yeah, I see you even have 180 subscribers, or 187, whatever the number was." He apparently remembered it, like it imprinted in his mind. "See, you have 187 subscribers. You're almost like Rabbeinu." He had some famous rabbi that he was following in Israel that's been doing it for 40 years. And he was making fun of me that, I had 187 subscribers, and his rabbi that's been doing it for 40 years has many, many more. Now, my response was, "Yeah, Baruch Hashem," a smile just like this. "Yeah, Baruch Hashem." In reality, what was he doing? What was he doing? In so many words, telling me, "Listen, you're a nobody. You're never going to be anybody. And the fact that you're even trying to be somebody is a joke. And I'm having a laugh." That's in essence what he was telling me. That's in essence what he was telling me. But it wasn't like, listen, a text message, just to hurt you privately. No, it was in front of other people. But Baruch Hashem, at that moment, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me some special strength to just simply smile and say Baruch Hashem. And that's it. That's how I took it. Years passed, and Baruch Hashem, things have changed. Let's just say that. So, what was his benefit of saying such a nasty comment? Nothing. Perhaps the benefit was that he's remembered today as a nasty person, 10 years later. That's what his benefit is. In reality, there are many people like that. There are people that are going to simply just throw water on your fire. Just try to get you to not do things. This happens often to people that are Baalei Tshuva. People see them with a yarmulke. "Oh, what happened to you? Somebody died?" Like, why can't they wear a kippah just because? Why does somebody have to die? Apparently, you don't think I'm good enough to be a Jew, or I'm good enough to be a religious Jew. "Oh, what happened to you? All of a sudden you're one of the Chachamim. You come to the Shiur Torah. Why can't I come to the Shiur Torah without being one of the Chachamim? Maybe I want to be a Chacham." There's always these types of people. Or they see you praying for a long amount of time, and they have something to say about that. Or they see that you don't want to talk during prayer, during shul. Or all types of things. People always have something to say. I remember the same thing happened to me when I was in business. Many, many years ago, before probably most of you were even born. I was a young kid that was very inspired to make it in life. I was going through some very difficult times financially. Didn't have much money to eat or drink. Literally, I had to live off of $1 per day because I had to save every penny that I had to pay rent. And every day I would leave the house, at the crack of dawn, something around like 5:30 in the morning. Get on the bus. Bus ride to work was usually about an hour, hour and a half, sometimes longer. Get to Manhattan from Staten Island, and start my day early. And I would stay there working nonstop until 1 o'clock in the morning. Literally, come home, sleep for a couple of hours, and do the whole thing again. So when I would come home, usually by the time I would get home, there was the last bus, I think it was around midnight or whatever it was. And by the time I would get home, the bus ride home was much shorter because there was no traffic. So it would only take like maybe a half hour or so to get home. And but then I would walk, all the way from the bus stop all the way to the house, and with my little briefcase and beat up from the day, and tired. And there was always this group of losers that were hanging out outside, drinking, laughing, doing nothing with their life. And I remember that every night when I lived in this one place, every night it was the same group of people always looking at me. "Where are you coming from?" And I would always say the same thing, "Coming from work." "Why? Why do you work so much? Why don't you hang out? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?" I said, "No, listen, I got to work. I got stuff to do, and move on with my life." And every day the same exact thing. And once in a while they'd pick at me and say, "Oh, you work so much. You're like a slave. You look at this. You look at that. Why do you do it? Go do this. Go do that." Well, long story short, some time passed and things changed. Eventually, I didn't need to take the bus anymore. Eventually, I was able to get myself an apartment in Manhattan. Eventually, I was able to get another apartment in Manhattan and in a company and so on and so forth. And some of those same losers wanted to work for me. So, there are always going to be people in your way. If you are on a path to succeed in anything in life, the snake will try to tell you something, even if he has no gain whatsoever. His gain is simply just to mess with you, just to pick at you, just to spit some venom at you. Even if you gave him the same opportunity the next day or with somebody else, he wouldn't do the same thing. Why? He was sent as a tool of a Satan to get in your way. Sometimes it's something that discourages people. Many times it is. But the key is to know that if you're going in the right path, you don't need to get any type of reassurance from your surroundings. Quite frankly, expect none. No reassurance from your surroundings if you're going in the right path, the path of HaShem. Why? Because there are many people that are not on that path, and they're going to do everything possible to keep you out of that path also, because the Satan is in essence telling their neshama that you doing tshuva, you getting closer to Hashem is in essence a prosecution against them. Why didn't they do the same thing? So their neshama, they're subconsciously doing something, they don't even realize why they're even doing it, but that's part of the reason. Anyway, we have here a Rashi that tells us that Am Yisrael were not humbled by their sickness. They didn't realize that the sickness is a punishment. They didn't have fear of Hashem. Rambam is telling us one opinion is lack of confidence in Hashem. The other opinion is because there are some wicked people that showed up even to the holy place, even to the Bet HaMikdash. There are some bad people. The Mishnah in Masechet Yoma says that one of the steps in preparation of preparing the Kohen Gadol to the big day of Yom Kippur is a week before Yom Kippur. He leaves his house and he lives in the Bet HaMikdash. And during that week, there's a couple of Dayanim from the Sanhedrin that train him about what to do during that big day of Yom Kippur, because he has to bring all the korbanot on that day, unlike the rest of the year, where he could simply choose what he wants to do, what he doesn't want to do. On Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol brings all the korbanot, and he has to go to the Kodesh Kodeshim, and he has to do everything in a specific way. And after training him throughout this whole week, he's without his wife, he's without his kids. Before they give him to the next set of Chachamim that are going to teach him how to do the Ktoret, which was a unique and very, very most difficult job at the Bet HaMikdash, the two Dayanim would tell him, we're here to remind you not to do all the things that we've taught you like the way of the Sadducees. And you are here vowing that you're not going to do it like the Sadducees, the heretics. And then they would turn around and cry. And he would say, yes, I'm not going to do it. And he would turn around and cry. Why are they crying? Because in essence, even though you're the Kohen Gadol, even though we've spent time with you, we taught you, we did everything with you, still the Torah commands us to suspect that maybe you're a heretic. Maybe you're one of the Sadducees. So we're making you swear that you're not going to do it like the heretics. And they'll cry for, in essence, being obligated to suspect him. And he's crying for being suspected. This is part of the servitude at the Bet HaMikdash. BeEzrat HaShem, we will see when HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings us the Mashiach and he builds the third Bet HaMikdash, or it comes down from Shamayim. This is in the Mishnah in Masechet Yoma, the first chapter. So now, the beautiful Torah here shows us three different opinions. So which one is right? The Chazon Ish doesn't tell us which one is right, really. He tells us, Rashi said this. The Rambam said something else, and he also told us of a third opinion. So which one is it? Rabbi Chazon Ish, which one is it? He says that's not the important thing. The important thing is to know why each brought what they brought. That's the important thing. So now let's analyze what's going on here. Rashi says that the people were not humbled by their illness because they were cured immediately. Now, I'm not sure how many people know this halakha and live by it, but the Rambam writes in his Sefer HaMitzvot. Sefer HaMitzvot is telling us what are our 613 mitzvot from the Torah. Mitzvah number 4. Mitzvah number 4. The fourth positive commandment is that which he has commanded us to believe in the awe-inspiring nature of the Exalted One and to fear him. This is a mitzvah to fear God. In essence, Rashi is saying they were not fulfilling this mitzvah. Now, perhaps they did and you don't know it. Therefore, the Rambam clarifies. This mitzvah includes not to be like the heretics who do as they wish without regard for the consequence of their actions. Meaning, they make sins, but they're nonchalant about it, they're careless, or they're calm about it. Oh, did I just turn that on? What, Shabbat started? Oh, okay, yeah. Said that. It's okay, it's okay. Oh, that's not kosher? Oh, yeah, I took a bite. It's delicious, though. Okay, fine, I won't eat the rest. They're nonchalant about the sins. Oh, I'm not allowed to wear this? Okay. Oh, I'm not allowed to do this? Oh, all right, no big deal. No big deal. We'll try again. They're calm, collected, no big deal. Says the Rambam, those people are heretics. Those people are heretics. Why? They do as they wish without regard for the consequences of their actions, but rather to fear the Blessed One's punishment at any moment. Here the Rambam clarifies, as the Kinat Sofrim points out, that this commandment is not fear of God, referring to the awe of His majesty and His glory and His kinghood. No, it is not referring to that type of fear. Here the Rambam is explicit about the fact of fearing God's punishment. And it's different than what the Rambam wrote in the Mishneh Torah, in Ilchot Yesodei Torah, chapter 2, halakha number 1, where he's referring to the awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and feeling of our own inferiority, how we're nothing, and contemplating the greatness of God, and our own insignificance. This is not it. Here, mitzvah number 4. The Rambam says, don't be a heretic that does not fear God's punishment. Don't be a heretic that thinks making sins is not a big deal. Don't be a heretic where after you make a sin, you're nonchalant about it. So what? I watch movies that are not allowed. I go here that's not allowed. It's okay. God will understand me. Don't be like those people, says the Rambam. As the Torah tells us in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 13. 6:13. As an old Talmid of mine told me a long time ago when he saw this. This is what the exalted God said in the Torah. Fear the Lord your God. See, here the Rambam is clarifying to us that the fear of the Almighty certainly has a couple of different ways of doing it. But the foundation is fear of actual punishment. Fear of getting cancer. Fear of getting AIDS. Fear of getting, whatever other disease there is out there. Not because you didn't eat healthy, or you smoked cigarettes, or you didn't pay attention that you were spending too much time in the sun, or you're working at some lab that has all types of chemicals. No! Fear that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will chas v'shalom punish you because you're making sins. Fear that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take that bank account that you swear by, will take that portfolio that you pray to, will take that house that you are simply comfortable because of, will take that significant other that you love more than life itself. Fear that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take all those things. Fear that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will literally cause you agony beyond your imagination. Fear that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can cause you more pain than you can possibly fathom, while the rest of the world continues at large without being affected. A person is obligated to believe this, to live like this, to think like this. Oh, but then I'll always be scared. Chazak u'baruch. That's the point. Reshit chokhmah yirat HaShem. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of HaShem. Yeah, but I don't want to be anxious all the time and scared all the time. No one says you have to be anxious all the time and scared all the time of everything. Just God. In fact, it's a much easier and better way of life. Most people are scared of people. They're scared of what people say, people think. They're scared of being late to an appointment. They're scared of, all types of side effects. They're scared of not looking right. They're scared of people not accepting them. They're scared of not getting stuff from people. They're constantly scared of everything except God. Because as the Netiveo, Rabbi Yisrael Misalant says, not Netiveo, is Or Yisrael. His book is called Or Yisrael. He writes that people are scared of everything, naturally, except Hashem. They're scared of bugs. They're scared of poverty. They're scared of loneliness. They're scared of all types of things, except God. Why? Because to be scared of God, you actually have to work for it. You have to acquire it. You have to learn Torah. And you have to understand more and more of where you stand versus where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. You have to understand how much you need Him. You have to understand how much power is in His hands. These are things you're not born with naturally. Your fear of bugs, that can come naturally. Your fear of poverty, you can learn that from other people that are afraid of poverty. In fact, most people that consider themselves thinkers in universities and all types of schools, they're not really thinkers, they're sheep. Why? They're following what the professor told them to think. They're following what the teachers and their fellow students think. They're not really thinking for themselves. They're thinking what other people think. People assume that, the evolution happened just like Darwin said. Even though Darwin himself said that this whole theory has endless amount of gaps. But he believes that over time, those gaps will be filled. Millions of fossils have been found. And as Rabbi Victor Miller says in his write-up, they still haven't filled those gaps. But yet people continue to believe. Why? Because someone told them to believe. Someone told them to believe that you came from a monkey. Someone told them to believe that there is continuity among the species even though there's no proof of it. So most people that consider themselves thinkers are not really thinkers, they're sheep. And therefore they're afraid of not thinking like other sheep, like other people, because then they wouldn't fit in. And people are afraid to be different. Here, the Torah commands you to be different by saying, don't be afraid of anything other than Hashem. You shouldn't be afraid of anything. In fact, you're forbidden from being afraid of anything other than Hashem. Why? Because He is the first cause. If there's a bug in front of you, if there's missing money in your pocket, if there's a bank account that's rejecting your checks and all of a sudden they're not working even if there's money in the account, or if there isn't money in the account, if there's an application that you put in that was rejected even though you fit the criteria, if there's a shidduch that doesn't work out, if there's even a marriage that you thought was good that suddenly ends, if there's all of a sudden pain in your side, if there's all of a sudden pain everywhere, if there's all of a sudden a doctor telling you that you don't have much time even though they don't really know the diagnosis, if there's all types of things happening in your life, it all came from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All of it, without exception. He's the first and only cause. All based on your actions. So being afraid of acceptance from society, or poverty, or hunger, or any of those things is wrong. Why? The bug can't do anything to you unless Hashem allows him to. The lion can't do anything to you unless Hashem allows you to. We saw that with Daniel. We saw that with Or HaChaim HaKadosh. We saw it with several different other sages throughout time. We saw it with Moshe Rabbeinu. Lions were afraid of him. Why? Because Hashem decides everything. All types of people will teach you. You can overcome the fear by, fighting it and then doing this. No. You don't need to overcome anything. You just need to know what to fear. Fear Hashem and Hashem only. And that's why it's one of the 613 commandments that HaKadosh Baruch Hu obligated us, not suggested to us, obligated to us to fear God and only God. And here says the Rambam, when a person is like one of these people that's a lates, as Rav Avigdor Miller says, that is the trait of Amalek. Amalek was known as a lates. What's a lates? He makes everything that's important and significant in the Torah, especially the fear of God, unimportant, inconsequential, something that's not necessary. Says the Rambam, fear of God means don't be like the heretics who do as they wish without regards to the consequence of their actions. They invite inappropriate guests to the community, to the synagogue, to the house. Why? Why not? But it's forbidden according to the Torah. Yeah, but I'm sure there's someone else that says otherwise. Who? Some rabbi that I know, and when? He said it, at some point. Where? We believe he did. So you are going against the Torah out in the open by doing things, and even when you're asked, even when you're challenged, you cannot even provide a legitimate response, but rather just a bunch of opinions that are in essence saying you believe you're right. And even if you're wrong, you're not that wrong. That, Rabotai, is heresy. That is a form of heresy, says the Rambam here. So when Rashi says that Am Yisrael lost the Sefer HaRefuot because they were not humbled by their sickness, because they were not afraid of God, In essence, the loss of this book was both a punishment and a cure in itself, or at least something that was supposed to be a cure. It was a punishment for not fulfilling a significant part of the Torah, of fearing God. But it was also a cure in itself, where now that you cannot just open up this book and get a cure, you'll be forced to pray to God. You'll be forced to realize how insignificant you are. You'll be forced to realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that decides whether you live or die. You'll be forced to do all those things. On the other hand, we see that the Rambam brings a lack of bitachon, lack of confidence in God. Lack of confidence in God is not good. Why? Why don't you trust God? The Chovot HaLevavot says in the Shar Avodat HaElohim, the gate called serving God, in chapter 5, that how does a person know that he's on the path of serving a Kadosh Baruch Hu? What is he supposed to think like? He should have a clear grasp of what the Creator has implanted in the human mind, namely the adoration of the truth, contempt of falsehood, preference for righteousness, avoidance of injustice, repaying the good with goodness and praising them, while repaying the wicked with wickedness and condemning them, being on peaceful terms with people and acting kindly towards them, returning praise for favors, reward for kindnesses, and punishment for wickedness, weighing the superiority of one reward over another and the severity of one punishment compared to another, and forgiving offenders when they truly repent. When these concepts are clearly established in man's soul by way of his intellect and power of perception, his intellect will have become sound and his perception strong. Further, the Chovot HaLevavot is saying, when he tries to recount his actions and grasp them in his mind and cannot do it, because they're all so encompassing and abounding and constant and continuous, he will demand of his soul what his mind recognizes as obligatory, repaying benefactors with good, choosing justice. He will resolve to repay HaKadosh Baruch Hu, may he be exalted, for the abundant good that he has showered upon him. But then when he realizes that he doesn't have the power to do so, and that his Creator does not need him, he will be bound to humble himself and to be lowly and small in his own sight. Afterwards, he will solicit his mind concerning those actions which will enable him to draw near and come close to God, in order that they may serve as a substitute for the return that is due to him. His mind will then guide him on the straight path in this regard. In so many words, the Chovot HaLevavot is telling us, if you're on the right path, your thinking changes. All of a sudden you're attracted to good. You want to do good for the sake of good, not because of reward, not because of praise. Simply, you are attracted to good because it is good. You are revolted, disgusted by bad, by dishonesty, by wickedness. You also naturally become more sensitive to the honor of God, and even more so, more sensitive to reward and punishment. And naturally, you also become more grateful. But that journey of increased gratitude will make you also in a quandary of sorts, of some type of difficulty that you've never dealt before, which is facing the fact that you owe everything you have to God, and that you actually cannot pay him back because he doesn't need you. Anyone that says otherwise is simply a heretic. But here, he's telling us that even though he doesn't need you, that shouldn't discourage you. Rather, it should humble you, which in itself will connect you more to Hashem and make you a better servant of Hashem. And therefore, the conversation between the soul and the mind, as the Chovot HaLevavot portrays here, it's a beautiful conversation between the soul and the mind. In essence, the soul is trying to do tshuva, and the mind knows how. And the mind says, if your longing for Hashem comes after clear realization of how great is the debt that you owe him, how little it is in your power to repay him, and that your neglect of it brings you ruin, while your diligence in it secures your salvation and your life, then your longing is genuine and your desire ardent. But if not, it is false. It is false yearning for God. So now, here we understand what the Chovot HaLevavot said 1,000 years ago about this connection, this deeper connection to Hashem, requires you to know where you stand, requires your thinking to change. And therefore, when the Rambam brings us this opinion of lacking bitachon, he's not saying that, no, this was not a problem. That there was no lack of bitachon because everyone was perfect. Because obviously, there is no such thing as everyone is perfect. There were many people that were righteous, as we see in the example. We see that there was kids that were learning Tumah and Torah. We see that there was nobody ignorant of Torah. People that, generally speaking, were on the best level they were ever. But there's always weak people. And lack of bitachon was certainly one of the problems. It's just that the Rambam is saying, I reject this, because I don't think that was the main key. But when it comes to lack of bitachon, that's always an issue, as we saw in the 5 books of Moses. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, they tested me 10 times, and all 10 tests are tests of lack of bitachon in Hashem. What is this lack of bitachon in Hashem? It's a lack of connection to Hashem that puts you in a situation where you trust something else and not Him. You have confidence in yourself and not Him. You have confidence in your money and not Him. You have a connection to something else bringing you your salvation and not Him. And ultimately, it makes you think that you don't need Him as much as you really do. And the Chovot HaLevavot says, if your thinking was right, you would reject this type of thought in the most aggressive way, because you would yearn for good and hate bad. You would yearn for truth and despise the falsehood. You would realize your own insignificance and how much you owe Him, but yet do not have a way to pay Him back because He doesn't need you. But that does not discourage you. Rather, it humbles you and turns you into a better servant of God. See, here, the lack of bitachon is rejected by the Rambam not because everyone was perfect. Rather, he's saying, look, so many people were connected to Hashem in the Torah. Naturally, you would think bitachon was not the problem. Why would bitachon be the problem if they're learning Torah all day? And that's why I say it's something else, he says. It doesn't make sense for it to be bitachon, because they're learning Torah all day. They're serving God all day. Obviously, they realize they're insignificant. Obviously, they realize the cure is not coming unless they read this book. So how can you read this book, get a cure for AIDS, get a cure for cancer, get a cure for brain aneurysm, get a cure for a stroke, get a cure for a heart attack, and not have bitachon Hashem? Doesn't make any sense. Because we're not talking about a bunch of heretics that are, worshiping themselves. We're talking about people that learn Torah. So the Rambam says this does not make sense as the problem for the whole generation. Certainly it was a problem for some people. But I don't think it was the main reason why it justifies hiding this book. I think the reason was that the few bad people that were there were more than a few. And in fact, caused much more damage than the good. Because those that learned Torah had fear of God, had bitachon, didn't really need the book because they could connect to Hashem. And perhaps them having access to it was good for them. But there was too much bad coming out of that book also, because the few bad people that did not have fear of God, that did not have bitachon Hashem, they were using the book for bad reasons. And here we see, Rabotai Karim, simply a way to understand that just because there is different opinions by the sages, it doesn't necessarily mean that one is right and one is wrong always. Zeh v'zeh divrei Elokim chaim. We have in the Torah times where it says one particular opinion about different reasons, different things, different laws. One of the examples that's in Achtov L'Yisrael, the 4th volume by Rabbi Ephraim, is the whole topic of lending money with interest to non-Jews being forbidden when it's with high interest, and in many, according to many opinions, even when it's without high interest. But needless to say, one of the things that the unlearned rely on is that, look, it says here that it's a mitzvah to lend money with interest to non-Jews. And there's a second opinion in the Torah that says that. But in Rabbi Ephraim's tshuva, which BeEzrat HaShem, we will have the strength and the merit to complete the translation of one day, very soon, he explains not only how this is the wrong thinking and the wrong conclusion, but he also gives a breakdown of how to determine halacha. In essence, showing us how to actually determine halacha, how to consider and evaluate these different opinions when you have one place with two opinions. How do you know which one to go with? In the Shulchan Aruch, it happens every so often where the Rabbi Yosef Karo says what the halacha is, but also he ends with a few extra words, v'yesh omrim such and such, which is the opposite. And the Chachamim say, we obviously know there's rules. We can't just decide, he wrote all of this, but we're going to decide otherwise because there's 3 extra words that says v'yesh omrim. There's rules to knowing how to read the Shulchan Aruch. Know that, yes, we're mentioning that there's yesh omrim, there's other opinions, but we don't paskin like it. What about when it's in the Gemara, in the source, where it says there's the first version, there's the Ika di Amre, and there's also the Ika di Matne, you have the different second version. Is there a firm way that you always pick like the first way, or like the second way? In essence, in the absence of a steadfast rule, we follow what seems to be more plausible, which is the first version, which has a strong reason to decree it in order to prevent something specific or in order to conclude something. Meaning, if there isn't a steadfast rule that makes an exception of some kind, that says we have to paskin like the second version that was mentioned, the default is go with the first option, the first thing that's mentioned. So why mention the second version at all? A person would ask. Number one, it's to show you that there are conflicting opinions. You're not the first one that rejected it, if you came up with a conflicting opinion. Another reason is to show you that the breadth of the Torah is much bigger than just simply being black and white. Third, that there are times that there are exceptions, where even though this is the rule, there are exceptions to the rule. Again, another example of showing how things are not black and white. Third, it obligates us to learn things deeply and not superficially like many people do, where they can learn a 2-3 hour shiur about a topic. For example, the film we did about Gehenom, or the film we did about Tikkun BEIT, or the film we did about Chibut HaKever. Each one of those films was a compilation of different lectures we've done over the last decade. Each one has over 100 sources from the different parts of the Torah, from the 5 books of Moses, from the Tanakh, the Nevi'im, the Ketuvim, from Shulchan Aruch, from the Gemara, from the Zohar, the Yerushalmi, the Bavli, the different books in Chassidut, different Sifrei Mussar. Literally, an extraordinary amount of sources were reviewed. Thousands upon thousands of sources were reviewed. Some were selected. Each film has over 100 sources. The Gehenom movie, I believe, has 172 sources. The Tikkun BEIT has somewhere around 120, and similar to the Chibut HaKever. Now, a person can watch this, and with the point and the intention of the film is to show you this is the truth. This is the final opinion. This is how Am Yisrael paskins. This is the bottom line. And most people arrive at that conclusion. But what happens is, and it's usually with people that do not watch the whole film, they either skim through parts of it, or see the first few minutes, or simply conclude that they know enough to already challenge. How? They go and find some Gemara or some writings in some other book of their likings that says something that seems like it's conflicting it. Where it says, look, over here it says the opposite. It says everyone goes to heaven, or everyone has a share of world to come, or any other type of statement. And for someone that invested literally years and years of their life learning Torah, learning this particular subject and other subjects, and also learning how to learn, it's extremely frustrating to see how people disrespect the Torah. I don't care about me, I don't care about anything else, I care about the kavod of my Rav. But I also can't stand it when people think the Torah is so small, where they think that they could just simply negate the whole thing because of one particular place they don't even know how to interpret, and they don't even know how to understand. This is as frustrating as can be. Why? Because it usually comes from people that are supposed to know better. Either they're people that have gone to yeshiva, attend yeshiva currently, sometimes even rabbis have had. you would expect these people to at least know how to learn and not just say, oh, because I found this, therefore it's the opposite. You can't just challenge an entire book of sources with just one particular point. That's not how the Torah works. Not because of this particular topic. It's regarding any topic. Same goes, for example, where people bring me, for example, different things in regards to Shabbat and the observance of Shabbat versus desecration of Shabbat. We know that there are certainly many lectures we've made over the years to discuss this topic of the obligations to keep Shabbat and how a Jew that does not keep Shabbat and desecrates it, drives on Shabbat, works on Shabbat, is considered equivalent of an idol worshiper according to the halacha. One common example that's the most extraordinary is the 12 times that it's mentioned in the Torah, and even clarified in the Gemara, in Masechet Chulin, Masechet Shabbat, Masechet Sanhedrin, and Paskin Halacha by the Rambam in Hilchot Shabbat, chapter 30, last halacha. But of course, there's going to be people that say, wait, but there are different poskim that were great in recent times that say that perhaps we are all tinokot shenishbu, we're all captured babies. And therefore, even if he desecrates Shabbat, you can still count him in minyan, and some even say make him even the chazan, the shliach tzibur. And of course, we've addressed this, and we brought the Rabbi Omer. The Rabbi Omer in Orach Chaim Siman Nun Hey, he brings the entire argument in the 10th volume, the different opinions. The ones that were lenient, the ones that were stringent. He brings the Igot Moshe, who says that you can include the Mechalel Shabbat for Kaddish, but not for Minyan. Most people understand the Igot Moshe, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, as if saying everyone's Tinok Shenishba, you can just include them in everything. No. What the Igot Moshe actually said is that if he's a Mechalel Shabbat, then you can make a special circumstance and include him for Kaddish, not for Minyan. Why? It's a lesser requirement. Rav Tzion Abba Shaul rejected this completely. So we have two different opinions. We also have Rav Ovadia himself in Sefer Alichot Olam clarify the Ben Ish Chai. And it was also supported by Rav Ephraim HaKohen, who was a Talmid of the Ben Ish Chai. Where you're not allowed to count them in Minyan, according to the Ben Ish Chai. Our own dear Rosh Kollel, Rav Sharvit, writes that someone's a Mechalel Shabbat, you don't even have to return something that was a loan to him. To that extent. Not that you should do it, but again, if, let's say, for example, he lent you money, and then he died, and his family is unaware of him lending you the money, Allah says if he was a Mechalel Shabbat, you don't have to return the money to him. Why? He's an idol worshiper. The rules don't apply to him that are for the righteous Jew. So we see here, wait a minute. So on one end, you're saying that maybe you can count them for Kaddish. Maybe you can't. Maybe some say you can't at all. Some say he's completely an idol worshiper. Some say even as dean that you don't even have to return a loan to him. And And they bring you the Chazon Ish, so that everyone's a Tinok Shenishba, but they forget to tell you that the same Chazon Ish said you still have an obligation to tell him that he's not allowed to violate Shabbat. And that second that he told him he's not allowed to violate Shabbat, because you're obligated in the mitzvah of rebuking, he's no longer Tinok Shenishba. Meaning, the Tinok Shenishba status, even if you want to use it, ends within a moment. And Rav Ovadia finalizes the whole thing here by saying, even if one wants to say that someone is a Tinok Shenishba, this is never referring to people that live in places where there are Jews, like New York, California, Florida, Israel, different parts of England. No, this is not referring to those communities. There is no Tinok Shenishba that lives in New York. There is no Tinok Shenishba that lives in Florida or in Los Angeles. There is no Tinok Shenishba that lives in Israel. There's no such thing. Why? He sees there are Jews. He sees people go to synagogue. He's heard of what Shabbat is. He's heard of what Yom Kippur is. Perhaps he even attended shul once or twice in his life. The fact that he chooses not to follow does not make him a Tinok Shenishba. It simply makes him a sinner. Now, the Tinok Shenishba that's referred to by the oral Torah is captured babies. Like Rav Mel Strasberg from nearly 500 years ago, that some priest kidnapped his baby. Little Shloimele. Horrific circumstances that miraculously were resolved 30 years later. But that kid grew up in a monastery, thinking he's a non-Jew, he's going to be a priest, and he became a priest. He was a Tinok Shenishba for those 30 years. He was a captured baby. Kidnapped when he was 3 years old, did not even remember who his parents were. That's a captured baby. Captured baby today, theoretically speaking, is if the Jew was raised in like Montana or somewhere in Tennessee where there's simply only cows and land next to you. You are somewhere in Idaho. You are somewhere in different parts of the world where there are no Jews, and you don't even know what a Jew is. Perhaps like some of the Palestinian terrorists that are actually Jews, but don't realize they're Jews because their Jewish mother married an Arab and was not allowed to tell the kids that she's a Jew and thereby making them Jews. They were captured babies. They're Tinok Shenishba. But to say that you, Moshe, and you, Yaakov, are Tinok Shenishba, just because you went to public school, just because you don't feel like following halacha, and then when you finally decide to go to shul, we're going to make you the shliach tzibur, the chazan. It doesn't work that way. It simply doesn't work that way. So how do we deal with all of these different issues? The same exact way. You don't ever take one single line from anywhere in the Torah and say this is the final law. Why? The Torah is huge, is enormous. And therefore, when you study a sugya, some type of subject, whether it's fundamentals like reward and punishment and Shabbat, or it's lending money with interest, or any other issue out there, when you learn the entire body of halacha, you realize they say aloud or not aloud in the lecture as if it's so simple. But in reality, to get to that point of saying, yes, it's allowed or it's not allowed, required an enormous amount of study an enormous amount of understanding and clarifications and debates and going back and forth among the Chachamim for the last few thousand years. Everything was considered. There's nothing new under the sun that you're going to bring that's going to simply put the Torah on its face. No matter who brings it. Why? Because it was already discussed, it was already reviewed, it was already clarified, it was already concluded. And even the ones that say otherwise, the Yeshomrim, were also included. We don't do what the Christians say we do, like pretty much close our eye to part of the Torah. Everything is opened. Everything is considered. Everything is evaluated. In every different circumstances, reevaluates the same exact things in order to make sure that everything applies just the same for different circumstances. And therefore, when we see the Chachamim say, the final conclusion for a Jew that violates Shabbat is that he's considered an idol worshiper, that he cannot be counted in minyan. We're not seeing an opinion of some fanatics. We're seeing this is simply da Torah. And even if you want to rely on those that were more lenient for the ignorant among us or did not have the right education among us, at the very least, educate yourself about the actual leniency itself. No one ever said someone has the right, has the permission to remain ignorant or to allow someone to remain ignorant, because the obligation of rebuke is part of the Torah, and the Torah doesn't change. And even those that want to challenge, wait, but there is some place in the Torah that says no one is good enough to rebuke anymore, needs to learn further and know that they're not talking about, simply disassembling the Torah and canceling one of the mitzvot, chas v'shalom, because that would negate one of the 13 principles of faith. It's referring specifically to not being able to rebuke the same way we were able to rebuke in the past, which is across the entire spectrum of the Torah, because there were many tzaddikim back then. But certainly you're obligated to rebuke on things that you're doing okay. If you eat kosher, you rebuke on kosher. If you keep Shabbat, you rebuke on Shabbat. But don't rebuke somebody on immorality if you're immoral yourself. Don't be a hypocrite. Either way, know what you're going to say before you say it. Don't just think that you could just take one statement you found on Google somewhere or one book you happen to have in your house and you could just simply take the Torah and throw it on its face. If the Chachamim say this is the final truth, you could assume that they got there after reviewing, after studying, after toiling, after trying to even reject the circumstance as part of the learning in order to put it to the test. And still that was the answer. So when you see something that says there is another opinion, there is another version, there is another statement, know how to handle it. Sometimes you have to take that statement and see what surrounds that statement. Who else discussed that statement? How do we conclude when it comes to that statement? Is this the final halakha? Is this the first version? The second version? What else is said that's conflicting this particular statement, that agrees with this statement? Don't just take the statement that you saw somewhere and say, this is it. That's not how Torah works. The Torah is enormous. And minimizing it is a horrible, horrible crime. And even more so, there are times they will see that there are different statements that at first look like they're conflicting. Like our shiur tonight. There was 3 different possibilities. Was it lack of yirat shamayim, lack of bitachon, possibility of poison. But we saw how, after delving into it, the opinions don't conflict. In fact, they could all be true. In fact, they're most likely all true because they fit like a puzzle. They had lack of fear of heaven because it was easy to access this book. And this easy access to the book led to less confidence in HaShem to help you, because you didn't need confidence in HaShem to help because you have this book. And since people go down in fear of Hashem and bitachon Hashem, it's more likely to make some of them more sinful, more wicked, and start delving into the forbidden parts of the book that discussed poison or use forbidden parts of the book. So you see, there are different ways that you can actually use the same 3 different opinions and see to it that they're all right, where this and this are the words of the living God. And therefore, a conflicting opinion is not really so conflicting, but rather another piece of the puzzle. But there are times where there are conflicting opinions. And a person must know that there is extensive talk in the Torah, in countless books, about every single topic, including the one that you think is important, that you think is the opposite of what people think. And if you study long enough and delve into it, you'll see the fulfillment of what the sages said in Pirkei Avot. You'll see that everything is in it. Thank you very much for learning with me. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless each and every one of us and all of Klal Yisrael with the Siyata Dishmaya during our learning of Torah, to be able to learn clearly, understand everything, and remember everything that we're learning, and to be able to apply all of it to our lives in order to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with fear and with love. BeEzrat HaShem will learn again later this week. Bracha v'atzlacha to everyone. Anyone that wants to donate and support our organization can go to bhtorah.org or BeEzratHashem.org, or donate on one of the many other avenues that you're watching it right now as we speak. Kol tuv, bracha v'atzlacha.